Hello everyone, I'm Laura and I'm going to show you how to crochet a Christmas tree using loop stitch. So if you've never crocheted before, I would recommend you watch my earlier videos about how to crochet in the round and how to do single crochet. So for this you're going to need some double knit green yarn. I'm using Hayfield Bonus DK. I'm also using some sparkly white yarn and some yellow yarn in DK, and you'll need a 3mm crochet hook. You'll also need some scissors, a stitch marker and a yarn needle. So to start off with, we're going to make a magic ring. So if you've never done this before, then I do it a little bit slower in my first video. And then we're going to do 6 single crochet in the magic ring. So we go underneath both of those strands, including the short one, when we're adding our stitches. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there we go, we count them. Then we pull tight to close the magic ring. And now you can take your hook out and put your stitch marker in, and that just marks where the round begins. So now we're going to do loop stitch, and to do that you want to have the yarn so that it's going in front of your finger instead of behind, and then we're going to use our thumb to make the loop. So we pull our hook around the piece of yarn which is around your thumb, you push into the hook, you yarn over and pull through, and then you pull through both loops in the same way that you would make a normal single crochet. So it's really the same as a normal single crochet, except before you do it you're making that loop with your thumb. And also make sure that your loops are the same size every time because you're using your thumb. So we're going to make one in every stitch so that we have 6 stitches and 6 loops, and when you count them you'll be able to count the V's, and they will just look like normal single crochet stitches from the top. So we take the stitch marker out to do the last stitch. And there we go, that's round 2 done. So then we just put the marker back in as you normally would when you finish every round. And now you can see that you have 6 loops, and when you look from the top you can count the V's and you have 6 stitches. So now round 3 we're going to do a single crochet in the next stitch, then an increase in the next stitch, and we're going to do that 3 times. So the section that's in brackets on the pattern is the section that's repeated the number of times stated, so 3 times. And then the number at the end, which is in brackets where it says 9, is the number of stitches that you should have at the end of the round. So there we go, that's round 3 done. Now as we go through this, I will be fast forwarding through the second half of it, so you won't have to watch every single round. So round 4 we're going to do loop stitch in every stitch. So the way this pattern goes is the first round was single crochet, then the next was loop stitch, so it alternates between a single crochet round and then a loop stitch round. Okay, so now we finish round 4 and we can see that we're building up our loops, and because we're increasing in 3s, that's how we get the cone shape. So the next round you put the yarn back round the correct way behind your finger, and we're going to do 2 single crochet, so 1 and then 2, and then we're going to increase in the next stitch, and we're going to do that 3 times for a total of 12 stitches. Okay, so round 6 is another loop stitch in every stitch. Now round 7 is a bit different because we're going to be working in the back loops only. So this is the front loop because it's closest to you, and this is the back loop because it's furthest away from you. So we're going to be doing a single crochet in the next 3 back loops, and then we're going to be doing an increase in the next back loop, and we're going to repeat that 3 times for a total of 15 stitches. Now the reason we're working in the back loops only for this round is because we're going to use the front loops later on to attach the white yarn to make the snow, and there's going to be 3 rounds in total on the Christmas tree that are spaced out, and each one of those rounds is going to have snow on it. So it can be a little bit more fiddly than usual, but you should get the hang of it fairly quickly. It can be helpful to sort of push your hook in more from the side, like turning it and grabbing it like I'm doing, rather than going in. It's a bit more of a precise motion than a normal single crochet. Okay, so we put our stitch marker back in as we normally would. And then for round 8, it's back to working in both loops as normal. And we're going to do loop stitch in every stitch for a total of 15 stitches. Now I put the instructions for round 9 to round 13 on the screen, so you can work through that and then you can meet me back. Okay, so round 14 is another back loop only round, but this time we're going to be doing a loop stitch in every back loop. So it's the same as before, except we're going into the back loop instead of both loops. So we just make the loop first, and it is quite fiddly, a bit more fiddly than a normal one. We just have to find the stitch, make sure you're going into the correct loop. And I found it helpful to just sort of push through rather than trying to pick it up. Luckily we only have to do a few rounds in back loop only. Okay, so I put the instructions for rounds 15 to round 20 on the screen, and you can meet me back and we'll carry on. Okay, so round 21 is another back loop only round, and this time we're going to single crochet in the next 10 back loops. We're going to increase in the next back loop, and we're going to repeat that 3 times for a total of 36 stitches. Okay, so this is the end of the last round, and I just have one more loop stitch to do. So I'm going to do that. There we go, that's the last one. And then I'm going to slip stitch in the next stitch. So we pull our yarn through, and instead of yarning over, we pull just through that first loop. And the reason I did that is just to sort of smooth it off so there's not like that jump like a step, so that it's more like a gentle slope, and then it'll sit much nicer on the ground or on the table when you put it down. So we fasten off, leaving enough tail to sort of weave in the end on the inside of the work. Then we thread the needle, thread the yarn onto the needle, and you just find the loops, but you have to be careful not to go into the loops which is actually the loop stitch themselves, because it will just pull, as you just seen. So we find the loops from the single crochet part of it, and I'm going to go through a few rows. So I'm going to go down to the next row and just go back and forward about 3 times so that it makes it more secure. And it makes it less likely to come out as well. Okay, so when you've done that, you could just trim the end fairly close to the work, and then you can sort of use your hand to push down the loops and tidy it up a bit. Okay, so now we're going to turn the Christmas tree upside down so that the narrow end is facing us, and we're just going to pull the loops down and find the front loops that we left over from when we worked in the back loops only. And we're going to find the last one, or it could be the first one, I'm not really sure, the one which is higher up, so it looks a bit like a step. So this is the second one. I'm just finding where each one is. So we'll start with the first one. So there is the top stitch, so you can see that's higher up than that one. and we're going to just pick up that first one, and we're going to pull up a loop of white. So to do that, you fold the white yarn, just leaving a few inches so that you have a loop, and then you put it on your hook and pull through. Now we're going to chain one, and we're going to chain another, so that's a chain 2 in total. So now we're going to do a double crochet, so yarn over, push the hook into that loop, yarn over again, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops on your hook. So that's a double crochet. Now you might need to pull on the green loops to tighten these front loops. Now it is a bit annoying, but you only have to do that for 2 of the rounds. So we're going to do another double crochet in that same loop, that same stitch. So in total we've got a chain 2 and then 2 double crochets in that first stitch. Now after you've done each one, you'll need to pull on the loop stitches just to tighten it, otherwise it tends to get quite loose. So now we're going to go into the next front loop, the next stitch, and we're going to slip stitch into that. And then we're just going to repeat that section in brackets. So we're going to chain 2, then we're going to make 2 double crochet in that same stitch. And now we're going to slip stitch in the next stitch, and we're going to repeat that all the way around. Okay, so I will fast forward and then meet you back at the end. So now that I've done my last cluster of stitches, we're going to slip stitch in that first loop again. And now we're going to leave a bit of a tail, cut the yarn, and then we're going to fasten off. Just pull a bit tight on that. Okay, so now we have our first round of snow. So we're going to just thread these tails onto the needle, and we're going to weave them through to the inside of the Christmas tree. So we just need to go through a gap and pull through, and I'm going to do the same with the other one. Now I didn't bother to weave them in on the inside or anything because it's a bit fiddly. You can, if you want to, you can turn inside out and weave them on the inside, but I just thought that's not really going to show, so I just sort of pushed them down to the end of the inside of the tree as far as I could, and then when I put them on a table they're not going to be showing. Okay, so now we have to do exactly the same on the second round. So first of all we have to find where they are, which is a bit difficult. We have to lift all these loops out the way. So there we go. Again, we're going to start with the higher up stitch. And the reason I do that is so that it's less like a step and more like a slope when you're working around. So it's exactly the same pattern as before. So we chain 2 and we do 2 double crochet in that same stitch, and then we slip stitch into the next stitch, and then we repeat that again all the way around. The difference with this round is that this was an increase round when we worked in the back loops only, rather than a loop stitch round. So the good thing is about this one is that you won't have to pull the loops to tighten them, because they're not going to be coming loose. However, on the third round, that was a loop stitch round again, so you will have to pull them. So to make the star, we start off with a magic ring, and we're going to do 6 single crochet in the magic ring. And then when you've finished the magic ring and you've pulled it tight, we're going to slip stitch in that first stitch, and this just joins it. So find that first one, can be a little bit tight if you're like me and you crochet fairly tight. So there we go, there's the slip stitch, and now it's sort of like a perfect circle. So now we're going to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to find the next stitch and we're going to slip stitch in it. And then we're going to repeat that all the way around. So chain 4, and then slip stitch in the next stitch. Alright, so we just do our last chain 4, and then we slip stitch in that last stitch. And then we're going to leave a little bit of a tail for sewing. We're going to cut that yarn, and we're going to fasten off. And pull tight on that end. So now we can sort of stretch out the chains and make them a bit more pointy, more like a star. So now we're going to sew the star onto the top of our tree. So we just thread the yarn onto the needle. And I'm going to sew it on the edge of the first round. So I'm just going to pick up loops from the edges of those single crochet stitches. So we'll just find a loop here, pull it through, and then I'm going to find another loop on the star, just on the corner of that triangle part, and pull that tight. Then I'm going to find another green loop next to it. Then I'm going to go into another yellow loop in the middle, and another green one just on the other side. And then just one more yellow one. And then to fasten off, I'm going to go back through that same green loop, and I'm not going to pull it through all the way. I'm going to leave a loop, and then I'm going to go through that loop and pull tight. And then I'm going to go through a stitch and pull through to the inside of the tree to hide that yarn. So the way the star's sewn on, it can be sort of bent forward a little bit, but it's fairly secure, so it should be okay. Right, so now we need to sew in the tail from the magic ring. We're just going to thread it onto our needle and then weave it through to hide it. So I'm just going to weave it through the back of the yellow stitches, just so that I can get down to where the tree is. Okay, so now I'm going to weave through the inside of the tree to hide that. And then we just push all the ends back inside, straighten up the star. And there you have it, your Christmas tree loop stitch is finished. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and if you'd like to follow me and check me out on Etsy, I have a shop called Laura Wilson Designs, and I design crochet patterns and sell them. I'll leave the link in the description. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time in one of my videos. Thanks.